That was about 3-4 years ago. I was promoting one of the Tekken movies.
Right.
That Steven Seagal. This journalist suddenly said, "Hey, what do you think of Steven Seagal saying you don't know how to punch?"
Hollywood hates Steven Seagal, and the reasons are shocking. Behind the scenes, actors, fighters, and even comedians have exposed him for arrogance, violence, and some truly bizarre behavior.
What is the essence of Zen?
But it all started with one brutal moment on set. One co-star says he slammed him against a wall. Actor John Leguizamo recalls laughing at Seagal's ego, only to be smashed into a brick wall with an Aikido elbow. It left him gasping for air.
He came up and he taekwondo'd my against the brick wall. Went, he's 6'5" and caught me off guard, knocked all the air at me. I was like, why?
But years later, an Oscar-winning actress would roast him in public. An Oscar winner called him fat and a fraud. Charlize Theron mocked his martial arts skills, saying he could barely fight. Then she went further, accusing him of mistreating women.
He put his hand on my knee, and that's when I just went, and it's crazy, and girls talk about this, where you just go blank, like you don't know what to do.
Her words cut deep, but the most humiliating moment came live on TV. Even Saturday Night Live banned him as their worst host. Cast members said he wasn't funny, refused to play along, and Lorne Michaels himself labeled him the worst host ever.
So Lauren's looking at me, and this is what I say. I say, so you want us to do the ugliest sketch that's ever been on television?
And that's just the beginning, because the deeper you go into Seagal's story, the crazier it gets. So hit that subscribe button right now, because what comes next will change the way you see Hollywood's most controversial action star. One of the earliest and most shocking stories comes from actor John Leguizamo, who had a run-in with Seagal on the set of the 1996 thriller Executive Decision. On the very first day of rehearsals, Seagal walked in and made an announcement that still makes Leguizamo shake his head to this day. Loudly, in front of the entire cast, Seagal declared, "I'm in command. What I say is law." Most actors would have laughed this off as some kind of joke. And that's exactly what Leguizamo did. He chuckled at how over the top it sounded. But that laugh turned out to be a big mistake. According to Leguizamo, Seagal suddenly slammed him with an Aikido elbow strike, pinning him against a brick wall and knocking the wind right out of him. Gasping for air, all Leguizamo could manage to say was, "Why? Why?" That bizarre and violent moment didn't just stick with Leguizamo, it became part of his comedy. Years later, in his Broadway one-man show Ghetto Clown, he reenacted the incident for audiences, even poking fun at Seagal's famously awkward running style. The crowd roared, but Seagal himself didn't find it funny. Reports say that after hearing about the mockery, Seagal threatened to punch Leguizamo if they ever crossed paths again. Leguizamo didn't hold back when reflecting on Seagal's transformation either. He openly wondered, how does a working-class guy who started as a martial arts trainer become such an egomaniacal diva? This explosive encounter set the tone for Seagal's reputation in Hollywood. But as wild as that story was, it was just the beginning. Because another A-list star Oscar winner, Charlize Theron, would later deliver one of the most brutally honest takedowns of Seagal's so-called fighting skills. If John Leguizamo's story painted Steven Seagal as violent and egotistical, Charlize Theron stripped away the rest of his reputation with just a few words. In 2020, during an interview with Howard Stern, Theron didn't just criticize Seagal, she flat-out roasted him. Theron, known for her own action-packed performances in films like Atomic Blonde and Mad Max: Fury Road, has proven time and again that she can hold her own in brutal, choreographed fight scenes. She even does many of her own stunts. So when Stern brought up Seagal's name, Theron didn't hesitate to weigh in on those viral clips of him awkwardly tossing around students in martial arts demonstrations. Her verdict? He's just incredibly overweight and pushing people. He can barely fight. It's ridiculous. The Oscar-winning actress went further, reminding audiences of the long list of women who had accused Seagal of misconduct, names like Jenny McCarthy, Portia de Rossi, and journalist Lisa Guerrero. For Theron, this wasn't just about his martial arts credibility. It was about his character. "I have no problem talking about him," she said bluntly, "because he's not very nice to women." Then, in a fiery moment, she looked straight into the camera and added, "So, f*** you." That kind of public takedown is rare in Hollywood, especially aimed at someone who once carried the status of a global action star. But for Theron, the truth was more important than protecting Seagal's ego. And yet, her scathing words weren't even the worst humiliation Seagal ever faced. Because years earlier, his reputation was shredded in front of a live audience on one of the biggest comedy stages in the world, Saturday Night Live. For many Hollywood stars, hosting Saturday Night Live is a career highlight, a chance to prove you can laugh at yourself and connect with millions of viewers in real time. But for Steven Seagal, his 1991 hosting gig went down in history as one of the show's biggest disasters. From the very beginning, things went wrong. Cast members recall that Seagal simply didn't understand the jokes. Tim Meadows, a longtime SNL veteran, later said Seagal complained constantly about sketches because he just wasn't funny. Julia Sweeney, another cast member, described the whole experience as so horrible on such a scale that it was undeniable. One particularly bizarre incident came when a sketch suggested that Hans and Franz, the fake bodybuilding duo played by Dana Carvey and Kevin Nealon, could beat Seagal up. Instead of laughing it off, Seagal reportedly locked himself in his dressing room, furious at the idea of being the butt of the joke. Sweeney called the meltdown legendary craziness, and the story quickly became part of SNL lore. Even David Spade, who's known for keeping things light, admitted it was painful to work with him. He did not want to play along. Seagal's stiff, humorless presence clashed with the show's fast-paced, improvisational spirit, making him nearly impossible to work with. But the most damning verdict came straight from the top. Executive producer Lorne Michaels, usually discreet about guests, didn't hold back. In a later sketch, when Nicolas Cage worried that viewers would think he was the biggest jerk ever to host SNL, Michaels quipped, No, that would be Steven Seagal." Being officially labeled the worst host ever wasn't just humiliating, it cemented Seagal's reputation in Hollywood as someone impossible to work with. And while SNL exposed his lack of humor, another actress would come forward with a story that revealed a much darker, more chilling side of Steven Seagal. If Steven Seagal's reputation for being humorless on SNL was embarrassing, actress Juliana Margulies' story was downright chilling. Long before she became famous on A&E The Good Wife, Margulies was a young actress hustling for roles. One audition in particular still haunts her, the day she met Steven Seagal for a supposed casting discussion in 1991. She was up for a part in Out for Justice, one of Seagal's biggest films at the time. Expecting a standard audition, she walked into his hotel room. But instead of professionalism, she was greeted with something bizarre and terrifying. As she sat down on the couch, she felt something hard beneath the cushion. That's when Seagal casually said, "Oh, sorry, I must have left my gun there." He then pulled out a large black pistol, as if it was the most normal thing in the world. If that wasn't unsettling enough, Seagal placed the gun on his nightstand and then asked if he could read her palm, claiming he was some kind of healer. With a weapon within arm's reach and the situation growing creepier by the second, Margulies trusted her instincts. She made an excuse, bolted for the door, and never looked back. Years later, she revealed that this disturbing encounter became a lesson that would protect her. When Harvey Weinstein later invited her to a similar hotel room meeting, she remembered Seagal and refused to go. In hindsight, Margulies says that Seagal's bizarre, threatening behavior may have saved her from another predator. This shocking incident showed a darker, more dangerous side of Seagal 1 that made Margulies realize just how unsafe Hollywood could be. And she wasn't the only actress with a disturbing audition story. Jenny McCarthy and Portia de Rossi would later come forward with their own terrifying accounts of Steven Seagal's behavior. If Juliana Margulies' experience was disturbing, Jenny McCarthy's and Portia de Rossi's stories were flat-out horrifying. Both women revealed encounters with Steven Seagal that highlight why so many actresses now openly warn others about him. Jenny McCarthy was auditioning for Under Siege 2, Dark Territory, in the mid-1990s. Excited for the chance, she showed up ready to read lines. But instead of focusing on the script, Seagal interrupted her. He said he wanted to get to know her first. Then, without warning, he ordered her to stand up. When she did, Seagal told her to take off your dress. Shocked, McCarthy pushed back, saying, "There's no nudity in this movie, or I wouldn't even be here." But Seagal insisted there was. That's when McCarthy broke down in tears, bolted from the room, and shouted back, "Rent my Playboy video, you hole." She later recalled how, on her way out, Seagal grabbed her and threatened her never to tell anyone what had happened. Portia de Rossi's story echoed the same disturbing pattern. Early in her career, she was called in for what she thought was a final audition for one of Seagal's films. Once inside his office, she says Seagal sat her down and unzipped his leather pants, insisting they needed chemistry off-screen. She fled immediately, horrified. Years later, de Rossi went public with her story on Twitter. Ellen DeGeneres, her wife, proudly retweeted it with the words, "I'm proud of my wife." These accounts weren't just Hollywood rumors. They were first-hand experiences from women who had nothing to gain by sharing them, except the truth. And if Seagal's treatment of women raised serious alarms, his feud with professional fighters showed a whole different side of his controversial reputation. Steven Seagal might have built his career on martial arts action, but in the real fight world, his reputation was far less impressive and sometimes even laughable. Professional fighters and stunt performers, who know what it really takes to survive in combat sports, have had plenty to say about him. Take Randy Couture, for example. The former UFC champion and Hall of Famer once joked in a 2012 interview that he'd happily come out of retirement for one last fight against Steven Seagal. It was meant as a lighthearted jab, but Seagal took it seriously. Instead of shrugging it off, he fired back with a chilling reply. Couture could face him anytime, anyplace, where there are no witnesses. What sounded like a threat only made Couture laugh harder. Years later, he doubled down in another interview, saying stuntmen had been complaining for years about Seagal's reckless behavior on set. In Couture's words, Seagal would be that guy who injures stuntmen. But if Couture's comments bruised Seagal's ego, Ronda Rousey crushed it. The UFC and WWE star revealed that her legendary uncle, Gene LeBell, once choked Seagal out on a movie set, so badly that Seagal allegedly lost control of his body in front of everyone. Rousey didn't just stop at telling the story. She went further, saying Gene would destroy him again, even at his age. Then, with her trademark smirk, she warned that if Seagal ever insulted her uncle again, she'd make him crap his pants a second time. These humiliating callouts from real fighters left Seagal's tough guy image in shambles. But as bad as it looked in the fight world, some of the most legendary names in Hollywood also had their own biting words, and even a near showdown that exposed Seagal in front of his peers. When it comes to Hollywood veterans, few are as brutally honest as Brian Cox. In his 2021 memoir, the Scottish actor known today for his ruthless role in Succession took aim at several famous co-stars. Johnny Depp, overrated, Edward Norton, a pain in the ass. But his most scathing assessment was saved for Steven Seagal. Cox described him as ludicrous in real life as he appears on screen, adding that while Seagal acted like he was on a higher plane, it was anything but higher. And Cox wasn't the only legend with a bone to pick. For years, Seagal and Jean-Claude Van Damme were locked in a rivalry that simmered behind the scenes and spilled into the public eye. On the Arsenio Hall show, Seagal dismissed Van Damme's martial arts credentials with a smug, "That's just a matter of opinion." Later, when asked if Van Damme could actually fight, Seagal laughed in the interviewer's face. But behind closed doors, Van Damme wasn't laughing. According to Sylvester Stallone, tensions came to a head at a party in Miami in the late 90s. Stallone says Van Damme finally snapped and challenged Seagal to a fight on the spot. With guests watching, Van Damme pressed him to settle things once and for all. Seagal, however, slipped away, leaving the party to avoid the confrontation. Later that night, Van Damme hunted him down in a nightclub, offering another chance. Once again, Seagal vanished. Stallone summed it up bluntly: Van Damme was too strong. Seagal wanted none of it. For action movie fans, the idea of a real-life fight between Van Damme and Seagal sounds like box office gold. But according to Stallone, Seagal didn't just dodge punches. He dodged the entire showdown. And while legends like Cox and Van Damme mocked Seagal's ego, rapper DMX took aim at something else: Seagal's spray-on hair and bizarre way of talking. By the early 2000s, Steven Seagal's star power was already fading, but his ego was still in full swing. That became crystal clear when he teamed up with rapper DMX for the action film Exit Wounds. On screen, the two looked like an odd pairing. Off-screen, their relationship was even stranger. Seagal tried to play the role of wise mentor, even praising DMX in interviews, calling him a gentleman and a thoughtful, respectful guy. But DMX remembered things very differently. In a brutally honest interview after filming, the rapper described Seagal as a fading head with spray-on hair. He mocked Seagal's stiff way of speaking, joking that he sounded like an old slave master addressing his servants. "Hey, what's up? We gonna have us a barbecue?" DMX couldn't believe the arrogance, saying flat out, "Man, who the hell do you think you're talking to?" It didn't stop there. DMX admitted he and his wife used to laugh about Seagal's antics behind his back, turning his bizarre behavior into a running household joke. At one point, DMX even cut through all the polite Hollywood talk and called Seagal exactly what he thought he was: an asshole. But here's the twist: years later, the two actually worked together again in Beyond the Law, one of Seagal's lowest-rated films. Why? Simple: Hollywood money. For DMX, the paycheck was enough to put personal feelings aside, even if the respect wasn't there. Still, DMX's words were a reminder that even co-stars who cashed the same checks couldn't stomach Seagal's larger-than-life ego. And while rappers and fighters mocked him, one of the biggest boxing legends in history, George Foreman, was so unimpressed that he publicly challenged Seagal to a fight. When you've managed to irritate fighters, rappers, and actors, the last thing you'd expect is to end up on the bad side of a boxing legend. But that's exactly what happened to Steven Seagal. In 2017, George Foreman, two-time heavyweight champion and global icon, took to Twitter and directly challenged Seagal to a fight. He wrote, "Steven Seagal, I challenge you. One-on-one. I use boxing. You can use whatever. 10 rounds in Vegas." It wasn't just a publicity stunt. Foreman told interviewers afterward that he was serious, and even at 69 years old, he was confident he'd knock Seagal out in 1 or 2 rounds. The matchup never materialized, but just the fact that a legend like Foreman felt bold enough to publicly call him out showed how little respect Seagal had earned. Meanwhile, actress Rachel Grant, best known for appearing in Die Another Day, revealed a much darker story. In 2018, she accused Seagal of assault during what was supposed to be an audition for Out for a Kill. According to Grant, Seagal repeatedly pressured her to remove her shirt, and when she refused, he forcefully pulled it down himself. Grant described feeling upset, embarrassed, and hurt, saying the whole situation left her shaken. Seagal's lawyers quickly denied everything, but the damage to his reputation was already done. And then there was Pamela Anderson. At the height of her Baywatch fame, she was considered for the lead in Seagal's blockbuster Under Siege, but her meeting with him quickly turned into an uncomfortable proposition. Anderson recalled him saying, "If you don't do it, that girl across the hall will." Without hesitation, she replied, "Good, goodbye." With fighters, actresses, and even boxers calling him out, Seagal's list of enemies just kept growing. And the strangest part? Some of the most bizarre stories came from Hollywood insiders who worked right alongside him. If you thought the list of celebrities who couldn't stand Steven Seagal was long enough, just wait. Even more Hollywood names have shared strange, bitter, or downright hilarious stories about him. Take Chuck Norris. The martial arts icon was once asked in a 1993 interview if Seagal's tough guy image was real or just for the cameras. Norris, usually polite and measured, chuckled before admitting that Seagal's attitude carries over into his whole life, unfortunately. Coming from someone as respected and disciplined as Norris, that subtle jab spoke volumes. Then there's actress Rae Dawn Chong, who recalled being sent to a late-night meeting with Seagal in the 80s. Instead of professionalism, she says he sat casually in his hotel room, spreading his legs wide so she could see more than she ever wanted to. He even asked if her blouse was silk and if he could touch it. Chong's blunt reaction? "You know what silk feels like." She walked out, later admitting, "If he touched me, I would have killed him." Character actor Stephen Tobolowsky, famous as Ned Ryerson in Groundhog Day, worked with Seagal on The Glimmer Man. His memory of the shoot? Trauma, terror, and confusion. Seagal tried to rewrite the script mid-shoot, claiming it was bad for his karma to kill people in films. Tobolowsky had to convince him that killing his character would actually be an act of redemption. And finally, Liam Neeson. During a 2017 Jimmy Kimmel Live appearance, he was asked about Seagal. Neeson didn't hesitate. "I want to know who dyed his hair. Stevie Wonder?" He also bristled at Seagal's bizarre claim that Neeson didn't know how to punch, laughing off the idea as absurd given his own boxing background. From quiet shade to open ridicule, Seagal has left a trail of enemies across every corner of Hollywood. And when you add them all up, one question becomes impossible to ignore. Has Steven Seagal earned his reputation as Hollywood's most hated star? Steven Seagal's reputation has been torn apart from every angle. Actors, fighters, comedians, and models have all come forward with stories that range from humiliating to downright disturbing. Some accuse him of reckless violence, others of bizarre behavior, and many of far more troubling encounters behind closed doors. What makes it even more striking is how consistent the pattern is. It's not just one bitter co-star or a single awkward feud. It's decades of stories from across Hollywood, sports, and music. Each new account adds another layer to the image of a man who went from action hero to industry outcast. And yet, some fans still defend him, clinging to his early movies and martial arts mystique. Which raises the big question: is Steven Seagal just misunderstood? Or has he truly earned the tidal wave of resentment that follows him wherever he goes? We'll leave that for you to decide. Do you think Seagal was unfairly targeted by Hollywood? Or did his own ego and actions create this mountain of enemies? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every one of them. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the celebrities who vehemently hate Steven Seagal, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because next time, we'll be uncovering even more shocking rivalries that Hollywood tried to keep hidden